Tonight, an extraordinary intense atmosphere hangs over Eastern Europe as the phrase "Moscow in darkness, Ukraine's Flamingo strikes back" has rapidly transformed from an unusual headline into a dramatic, unfolding international moment. What began as scattered reports of unexplained shutdowns across parts of Moscow has now escalated into a major story redefining the energy, security, and political calculations of both Russia and Ukraine. As the world continues to monitor every new development, experts remain divided over what the so-called Flamingo actually represents, a symbolic name for a Ukrainian countermeasure, a newly revealed strategy, or a coded reference to a previously unknown operation. Tonight, we bring you the full picture as it stands, breaking down what happened, what it means, and how the world is reacting in real time. It was just after dusk in Moscow when the first indications of an abnormal electrical failure began circulating through Russian social media channels. Hundreds of residents posted videos showing entire blocks going dark, streetlights blinking out, traffic signals shutting down, and residential neighborhoods suddenly losing power. What made this outage unusual was not only its widespread reach affecting areas from central Moscow to the outer districts, but also the timing. Several Russian military monitoring accounts had warned earlier in the week that Ukraine might be preparing an unconventional response to intensifying Russian strikes on Ukrainian infrastructure. When the unusual term Flamingo briefly appeared in Ukrainian Telegram channels last night, analysts began to speculate that Kyiv might be signaling something unexpected, something outside the usual framework of drone or missile retaliation. Within an hour of the first outages, Moscow's mayor issued a brief statement acknowledging technical problems affecting multiple districts. But Russian commentators, both pro-government and independent, quickly pointed out that this was not consistent with a typical technical glitch. The failures were too widespread, too synchronized, and too deeply connected to the city's grid controls. Almost immediately, rumors began circulating that a targeted cyber attack could be behind the sudden collapse of electrical supply in key sectors of Russia's capital. As chatter continued to grow online, Ukrainian media outlets began hinting that Flamingo was not merely symbolic but a deliberate counter-operation designed to send a message back to Moscow after weeks of escalating Russian offensives on Ukrainian civilian energy infrastructure. Though Ukrainian officials have not formally confirmed involvement, sources close to the Ukrainian defense network have described Flamingo as a precision-focused retaliation concept that does not rely on missiles or drones, but rather on digital or electromagnetic disruption. According to these sources, Flamingo is built on the philosophy that Ukraine must respond in ways that undermine Russian military confidence without causing widespread civilian harm. In their words, the intention is to darken symbols, not destroy lives. This aligns with Ukraine's broader messaging throughout the conflict, emphasizing proportionate responses while highlighting Russian vulnerabilities. The power outages across Moscow have revived global debates about the rising role of cyber warfare. Over the last decade, militaries around the world have increasingly recognized that digital operations can cripple cities more effectively than traditional weapon strikes. Tonight's situation in Moscow has resurfaced those concerns on an international scale. Intelligence experts warned that if this indeed was a Ukrainian operation, it represents a significant escalation in the ongoing conflict and a potential model for future crises. Nations from the United States to China are watching closely, knowing that energy grids are among the most vulnerable elements of any modern infrastructure. A senior European cybersecurity official told us that Flamingo could be a turning point not just in the war, but in global doctrine around retaliation and deterrence. Inside Russia, the narrative has quickly shifted from speculation to accusation. Prominent Russian political figures have already blamed Ukraine and, by extension, its Western partners for the outage. Russian state television has framed the event as a Western-engineered sabotage attempt on the heart of Russian civilization. Some commentators have gone even further, suggesting that Flamingo is a NATO-designed strategy aimed at testing Russia's domestic defenses. While NATO has not responded to those claims, Western officials have reaffirmed that Ukraine retains the right to defend itself and respond to attacks on its civilian population and infrastructure. Residents of Moscow, meanwhile, have been left grappling with both the practical and emotional consequences of the blackout. As darkness spread, videos emerged of police directing traffic manually, shoppers navigating supermarkets lit only by emergency lamps, and families sitting in candlelight in their apartments, trying to gather information from battery-powered radios. Many residents have expressed frustration at the lack of clear communication from authorities. Others have voiced fear that the outage is a sign of deeper instability within Russia's security systems. It is not lost on the population that Moscow, Russia's political and economic center, is supposed to be the best protected city in the country. Cultural observers have also noted the symbolic power of the moment. For months, Russia has targeted Ukrainian cities with missile barrages that destroyed critical power stations, leaving millions without electricity, heat, or water. By plunging parts of Moscow into darkness, Flamingo appears to have mirrored the psychological element of those attacks, demonstrating that even Russia's most heavily defended metropolis is not immune. Experts say the sudden visibility of vulnerability in Moscow could have consequences for domestic morale. particularly among citizens who have supported the war, believing that Moscow remains untouchable. One of the most surprising elements of tonight's events is the degree of sophistication reflected in the operation. Unlike traditional cyber attacks that create permanent damage or paralyze essential systems for extended periods, Flamingo's impact appears designed to be temporary but highly visible. The outages, which have lasted from 15 minutes in some areas to over 2 hours in others, seem to follow a calculated pattern rather than a chaotic spread. This suggests that whoever engineered the disruption possessed detailed knowledge of Moscow's electrical grid architecture. Such precision has raised questions about whether insiders or third-party actors may have provided technical assistance. Russia has already vowed to investigate the matter from all possible angles, including internal sabotage. In Ukraine, public reaction has been mixed but emotional. Many Ukrainians have taken to social media to express a sense of symbolic justice, arguing that Flamingo demonstrates Ukraine's ability to defend itself in innovative ways without resorting to destructive tactics. Others worry that Russia may use the blackout as justification to intensify strikes on Ukrainian cities. Memories of past winter blackouts weigh heavily on the Ukrainian population, and concerns about retaliation are very real. Ukrainian analysts have emphasized that if Flamingo is indeed a Ukrainian operation, it is a strategic response meant to deter or provoke. Internationally, governments have been cautious in their statements. The United Nations has urged restraint, calling on both sides to avoid escalations that could deepen civilian suffering. European Union leaders, while stopping short of commenting directly on Flamingo, have reiterated the need for Russia to halt its offensive actions, implicitly framing tonight's developments within the broader context of Russia's own campaign against Ukrainian infrastructure. The United States has confirmed monitoring the situation closely but has not attributed responsibility to Ukraine. American officials have previously warned that Russia's attacks on Ukrainian energy systems could invite asymmetric responses across the globe. Cybersecurity firms, intelligence agencies, and military analysts are now dissecting the implications of Flamingo. If it is proven to be a digitally driven operation, it may mark one of the most dramatic examples of cyber warfare influencing a major geopolitical conflict. Some experts suggest that future wars may rely more heavily on operations that target electrical grids, transportation hubs, and communication networks rather than conventional bombing campaigns. Others warn that normalization of such tactics could increase global instability, especially if countries begin viewing critical infrastructure as fair game for retaliation. Russian military analysts have raised another point: the psychological factor. For a government that prides itself on projecting power and control, the image of Moscow in darkness is politically damaging. One Russian commentator said, "For the first time, Muscovites felt what Ukrainians have felt for months." That sentiment, though not widely aired on state media, is beginning to gain traction online, where Russian citizens are increasingly critical of the government's assurances of security. Despite the dramatic visuals and widespread speculation, Russia has so far refrained from directly announcing any military retaliation. Instead, officials insist they are focused on restoring stability to the capital's infrastructure. However, many analysts believe that Russia will not let an incident of this scale go unanswered for long. Whether the response comes in the form of intensified military action, an information campaign, or a counter-cyber operation remains to be seen. As one Ukrainian official anonymously stated, both sides have red lines. Flamingo was a message, "We can reach you too." How Russia interprets and reacts to that message will determine the next chapter in this escalating conflict. Energy experts have also weighed in tonight, highlighting the extraordinary vulnerability of modern states to infrastructure disruption. Many have long warned that power grids are some of the least protected assets, despite being among the most important. In this sense, Flamingo, if confirmed, could serve as a global wake-up call. From Tokyo to Berlin to New York, governments will likely revisit their cybersecurity and electromagnetic defense measures in the weeks to come. As we speak, repairs are underway across the affected parts of Moscow, and partial power has already been restored. Still, Russian authorities face a challenging information dilemma: how to explain the outage without admitting to a major breach. Meanwhile, Ukrainian citizens brace for possible retaliatory strikes, hoping that Flamingo does not bring harsher consequences to their already war-torn country. What is clear tonight is that the conflict between Russia and Ukraine is entering new, uncharted territory. With the introduction or revelation of operations like Flamingo, the battlefield is expanding beyond physical borders and into the digital realm. This shift raises profound questions about the future of warfare, civilian safety, and the balance of power between nations with vastly different resources. As global attention intensifies, diplomats and leaders face mounting pressure to address the conflict before it spirals further into a dangerous technological arms race. For now, Moscow remains partially in darkness, Ukraine remains defiant, and the world remains on edge. Whether Flamingo is a one-time warning shot or the beginning of a new phase in the conflict is a question only the coming days can answer. But tonight, one fact stands out: The war has once again proven that it can evolve in unexpected ways, challenging assumptions, rewriting strategies, and altering realities on both sides of the border. The international community watches closely as both nations navigate the aftermath of this unprecedented moment and prepare for whatever comes next.